The surprise they'll never get to give. 2 years ago, I moved 1,500 miles away from my parents without telling them where I was going. Last Tuesday, they somehow found my phone number and called to say they wanted to visit. They had a surprise for me, they said. Their voices were different, softer, almost pleading. But I knew better. I've heard those voices before, right before they pulled the rug out from under me again. I told them to keep their surprise to themselves. I meant every word. You see, when you grow up with parents who treat love like a weapon and affection like a reward you have to earn through suffering, you learn to recognize the sound of manipulation wrapped in honey. My parents were masters at it. They could make emotional terrorism sound like family bonding, make financial abuse feel like tough love, and turn my achievements into their personal success stories while my failures became evidence of my inherent worthlessness. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I got here, why that phone call made my hands shake with rage instead of joy, and why the word surprise from their lips sounds more like a threat than a gift. Growing up in the Martinez household meant walking on eggshells that somehow kept multiplying under your feet. My father, Miguel, was a construction foreman who brought his job site authority home every night like mud on his boots. He'd slam through the front door, his work clothes dusty and his mood darker than the thunderclouds that rolled across our Ohio sky. Mom, Patricia, worked as a secretary at the county courthouse, where she spent 8 hours a day being polite to strangers and saving all her frustration for us. They had this system, you see. Dad would explode first, screaming about dirty dishes, unpaid bills, my grades, my attitude, my friends, my clothes, my face. Then Mom would come in as the peacemaker, the reasonable one. She'd pull me aside while Dad cooled off and explain, in that patient voice she used for courthouse visitors, how disappointed they were in me. How I needed to try harder. How other kids didn't put their parents through this kind of stress. I was 13 when I realized this wasn't normal. It happened at my friend Jessica's house during a sleepover. Her mom brought us warm cookies and asked about our day, actually listening to our answers. When Jessica spilled grape juice on the carpet, her mom just laughed and said accidents happen. No screaming. No lectures about responsibility. No cold shoulder for the next 3 days. I went home the next morning and tried to tell Mom what I'd noticed. Big mistake. She sat me down at our kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg that nobody ever fixed, and explained to me why I was being ungrateful. Other families, she said, had real problems. We had a roof over our heads, food on the table, clothes on our backs. What more did I want? What I wanted was to feel safe in my own house. What I wanted was parents who celebrated my successes instead of finding ways to diminish them. What I wanted was to bring home a report card full of A's without immediately being asked why I got a B+ in gym class. But wanting and getting are two different countries, and I lived in the wrong one. High school was when things escalated. I started working part-time at a local diner, saving money for college because I knew they wouldn't help. Every paycheck I brought home became a family discussion. Mom would sit there with her calculator, explaining how much I owed them for housing, food, utilities, the privilege of existing in their space. Dad would nod along, adding commentary about how in his day, kids contributed to the family instead of being burdens. They took 60% of everything I earned. 60%. When I protested, Mom pulled out a notebook where she'd been tracking every expense I'd caused them since I turned 16. Doctor visits, school supplies, the increase in the grocery bill, the wear and tear on the washing machine from my clothes. She had it all calculated down to the penny. I remember staring at that notebook, feeling something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't a family budget. This was an itemized bill for being their child. Senior year, I got accepted to 3 colleges. 2 offered partial scholarships. I was proud, excited, ready to start planning my future. I made the mistake of sharing this news at dinner, expecting. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a congratulations. Maybe a smile. maybe acknowledgement that their child had accomplished something worth celebrating. Instead, Dad put down his fork and asked how I planned to pay for it. When I mentioned working more hours and taking out loans, he laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh that makes your skin crawl. You think you're better than us, he said. Think you're too good for this house, this family. College is for rich kids and dreamers. You're neither. Mom nodded along, adding her own twist. Besides, who's going to take care of us when we get older? We've invested 18 years in raising you. Don't you think you owe us something? That word. Invested. Like I was a stock they'd bought, expecting returns. I went to college anyway, working 3 jobs to pay for it. They didn't speak to me for 6 months. When they finally called, it wasn't to ask how I was doing or whether I was happy. It was to tell me that my selfishness was affecting Dad's blood pressure and Mom's sleep. I was literally making them sick by pursuing an education. College became my refuge, but even there, their influence followed me like a shadow. Every time my phone rang, my stomach would drop. Every visit home for holidays turned into an interrogation about my grades, my friends, my plans, my apparent ingratitude for everything they'd sacrificed for me. The financial manipulation continued too. They'd call with emergencies. The car broke down, the roof was leaking, Dad needed medical tests they couldn't afford. Could I help? Just this once? They'd pay me back, of course. They never did. And when I stopped lending money, I became selfish again. Heartless. A daughter who'd forgotten where she came from. I graduated with a degree in accounting and a mountain of debt. Instead of congratulations, I got lectures about how I'd wasted 4 years when I could have been working and contributing to the family. When I got my first real job, making decent money for the first time in my life, they suddenly became interested in maintaining a relationship. Sunday dinners became weekly financial planning sessions where they'd hint about their retirement dreams, their medical expenses, their hopes that their successful daughter would remember who raised her. The guilt was constant, suffocating, inescapable. I was 26 when I realized I was living my entire life in reaction to their expectations and manipulations. Every decision I made was filtered through the question of what they would think, what they would say, how they would make me pay for choosing my own path. I wasn't living my life. I was managing their emotions and funding their lifestyle while slowly disappearing. The breaking point came during Christmas dinner 2 years ago. I'd been seeing someone, a wonderful man named David who treated me with kindness and respect. I'd been hesitant to introduce him to my parents, knowing their talent for poisoning anything good in my life. But after 6 months of dating, it felt dishonest not to include him in family gatherings. David brought flowers for Mom and offered to help Dad with some home repairs. He was polite, engaged, genuinely trying to connect with my family. I watched my parents' performance with growing nausea. They were charming, welcoming, playing the role of loving parents meeting their daughter's boyfriend. After dinner, while David was helping with dishes, Mom cornered me in the hallway. "He seems nice," she said, but her tone carried that familiar edge. "Well-dressed. Good job. I hope you're not planning to scare him away with all that college debt you insisted on accumulating." Then Dad joined us, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Just remember, sweetheart, men don't want women with baggage. And you've got plenty of that. Maybe don't mention all the money you owe us right away." The money I owed them. For being born. For existing. For daring to become an independent adult. Something snapped inside me that night. After David left, after they'd performed their loving parent routine one more time, I sat in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling and realized I was done. Done pretending this was normal. Done accepting their version of love. Done letting them hold my past hostage to control my future. I started planning my escape that night. It took me 4 months to arrange everything quietly. I found a job in Colorado, a small accounting firm in Denver that offered exactly what I needed: distance, good pay, and a fresh start. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone except David, who supported my decision even though it meant ending our relationship. The day I left, I drove by their house one last time. Mom was in the front yard, watering her precious roses, the ones she'd never let me touch as a child because I might damage them. Dad's truck was in the driveway, probably inside watching his afternoon shows and complaining about the government. They looked so ordinary, so normal. If you didn't know better, you'd think they were just regular parents living their regular lives. You wouldn't see the emotional landmines buried in their everyday conversations. You wouldn't recognize the way they turned love into leverage and family into a debt collection agency. I didn't stop. I drove away from that house, that town, that version of myself that had spent 30 years trying to earn love that was never going to come. Not the way I needed it. Not without conditions, expectations, and itemized bills. The first year in Denver was lonely but peaceful. I found a small apartment with a mountain view, made new friends who didn't know my history, built a life based on my own choices instead of their expectations. I changed my phone number. I didn't send Christmas cards or birthday wishes. I became someone they couldn't find, couldn't manipulate, couldn't bill for the privilege of existing. For the first time in my adult life, I had money in my savings account that wasn't earmarked for their emergencies. I could buy myself nice things without calculating whether I could afford their inevitable requests for financial help. I could make plans without wondering how they'd sabotage them. I thought I was free. Then, last Tuesday, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Elena? Mom's voice, older now, shakier. Sweetie, is that you? My blood turned to ice water. How did you get this number? Oh, honey, we've been so worried. We hired someone to find you. We needed to know you were okay. They hired someone. To track me down. To violate the boundary I'd spent 2 years building. We want to come visit, Dad's voice now, on speakerphone. We have something for you. A surprise. Something we think will make up for any misunderstandings we might have had. Misunderstandings. 28 years of emotional manipulation, financial abuse, and psychological terrorism reduced to misunderstandings. We've been thinking, Mom continued, about all the things we said when you were younger. We realize we might have been too hard on you sometimes. Too focused on teaching you responsibility. We want to make it right. The words sounded rehearsed, like they'd practiced this conversation. And maybe they had. Maybe they'd sat at that same wobbly kitchen table, strategizing how to reel their investment back in. Where are you living now? Dad asked. We could be there by the weekend. We've got something really special planned. Something that will show you how much we love you. That word again. Love. Their version of it had nearly destroyed me. I don't want you to visit, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I don't want your surprise. I moved away for a reason. Silence on their end. Then Mom's voice, smaller now, confused. But sweetie, we're your parents. We love you. Families work through their problems together. Some families do, I said. But some families are too toxic to fix. Some relationships cause more damage than they're worth maintaining. Elena, that's cruel, Dad said. After everything we've done for you, sacrificed for you. And there it was. The same script they'd been reading for my entire life. The sacrifices. The things I owed them. The guilt designed to override my boundaries and pull me back into their orbit. Keep your surprise, I said. Whatever it is, I don't want it. I don't want visits. I don't want phone calls. I don't want your version of love anymore. You don't mean that, Mom whispered. We're your family. No, I said, feeling something powerful settle into my chest. Family doesn't keep itemized lists of what their children owe them. Family doesn't treat love like a business transaction. Family doesn't hire private investigators to hunt down children who need space to heal. I hung up before they could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear this time. From relief. From the rush of finally saying what I'd needed to say for decades. They called back 16 times that day. I didn't answer. They called again the next day. And the next. Always different numbers, always the same message. They loved me. They were worried. They had something important to give me. They just wanted to talk. But I know what their talks are like. I know how their surprises work. I know that whatever they're offering comes with strings attached, conditions applied, emotional interest compounding daily. I changed my number again yesterday. I'm considering moving again too, just to be safe. Because the thing about people who think love is something you earn through suffering is that they never really let you go. They keep finding new ways to remind you that you're still in debt to them, still obligated to accept their toxic version of family. But here's what I've learned in my 2 years of freedom: I don't owe them anything. Not my location, not my phone number, not my presence, not my forgiveness. I don't owe them my future just because they provided my past. I don't owe them my emotional well-being as payment for their financial investment in raising me. I spent 30 years believing that being their daughter meant accepting whatever treatment they chose to give me. I spent 30 years thinking that family meant enduring abuse because blood relations made it somehow more acceptable than if strangers treated me the same way. I was wrong. Family should be safe. Love should be unconditional. Parents should celebrate their children's independence, not sabotage it. The people who claim to love you shouldn't keep detailed records of what you owe them for that love. Real love doesn't come with a price tag. Real love doesn't require private investigators to track down people who need space. Real love doesn't disguise itself as surprises designed to manipulate you back into toxic patterns. I don't know what their surprise was. Part of me is curious, were they planning to offer money? Property? Some grand gesture designed to prove they'd changed? But it doesn't matter. Whatever they were offering, it would have come with expectations. Conditions. A new contract for me to sign with my emotional well-being as collateral. I'm done signing those contracts. I'm 32 now, living in a city where nobody knows my history, building relationships based on mutual respect instead of obligation. I have friends who celebrate my successes without immediately asking what I'm going to do for them in return. I'm dating someone who understands that love is something you give freely, not something you use to control people. My apartment doesn't have family photos on the walls. I don't send Mother's Day cards or Father's Day gifts. I don't lie awake at night wondering if I'm being ungrateful or selfish. I sleep peacefully in a bed I bought with money I earned, in a home I chose, in a life I built without their approval or their input. And you know what? I'm happy. Genuinely, authentically happy for the first time in my adult life. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my family. The question always surprises me because it assumes I had a family to miss. What I had were two people who used the words mother and father to justify behavior that would be unacceptable from strangers. What I had were landlords who disguised themselves as parents and presented bills as expressions of love. I don't miss walking on eggshells. I don't miss itemized guilt trips. I don't miss having my achievements diminished and my failures magnified. I don't miss feeling like a burden who should be grateful for basic human treatment. What I miss is the family I never had. The parents who might have celebrated my college acceptance instead of questioning my worthiness. The family dinners that could have been about connection instead of financial obligation. The childhood that could have been about feeling safe and loved instead of constantly proving I deserved those things. But you can't miss what never existed. And you can't fix people who don't believe they're broken. My parents will probably keep trying to contact me. They'll use different numbers, different approaches, different people to deliver their messages. They might show up at my workplace or hire more investigators. They might try to convince other relatives to intervene, painting me as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her loving parents for no reason. Let them. I know the truth about who I am and what I deserve. I know the difference between love and manipulation, between family and hostage situation, between sacrifice and investment expecting returns. I am not responsible for managing their emotions or funding their retirement or providing them with the daughter-shaped trophy they can display to prove they were good parents. I am not required to accept their version of love just because they're biologically related to me. I am free to choose who gets access to my life, my time, my energy, my love. And I choose people who understand that those things are gifts, not payments on a debt I never agreed to incur. So no, Mom and Dad, I don't want your surprise. I don't want your visits or your calls or your investigation services tracking me down. I don't want your version of love that comes with conditions and interest rates and emotional collection agencies. What I want is the peace I've found in building a life without you. What I want is the family I'm creating with people who understand that love multiplies when you give it freely instead of diminishing when you use it as currency. Keep your surprise. I've already given myself the greatest gift of all, freedom from people who taught me that I had to earn the love I deserved simply by existing. And that's a surprise worth more than anything they could ever offer. If you've got family situations that make you question your own worth, remember this: you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they share your DNA. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect yourself from people who use love as a weapon. Share your story in the comments if you've been there too, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about finding your strength.